The site around Sheffield's Hillsborough Stadium on the 15th of April 1989 wasn't unusual. It was a blockbuster FA Cup semi-final clash between two of the biggest clubs in the English First Division at the time, Liverpool and Nottingham Forest. And like any other build-up to a big game, fans surrounded the stadium in their numbers. Excitement hit the roof, and the atmosphere was charged before kick-off at 3 p.m. But soon after, that electrifying atmosphere turned sour as 96 Liverpool fans paid the ultimate price in a horrific event that's regarded as the worst sporting crowd disaster in the UK's history. Today, we go back in time and take a look at the Hillsborough Disaster. How did it unfold, and who is to blame? Let's find out together. Cup ties are known for attracting big numbers, and the 1989 FA Cup semi-final was no different. All 54,000 available tickets were sold out. 24,000 seats were allocated to Liverpool fans in the west end of the stadium, while Nottingham Forest supporters got 20,000 seats in the south end. For the organisers, this would help avoid potential clashes between both sets of fans. But little did they know, they were creating an even bigger problem. Due to the arrangement, all 24,256 Liverpool fans had to access the stadium through Leppings Lane, which only had 23 turnstiles. Even more worrying was the fact that 10,000 Liverpool fans had bought tickets for the standing terraces, meaning they had to access the stadium through 7 turnstiles. In comparison, 60 turnstiles led to the south end, which was allocated to the 20,000 Nottingham Forest fans. Also, the south end had a maximum capacity of 29,800 seats. Ordinarily, the team with the bigger fan base should get the bigger end of the stadium, but the organisers surprisingly chose a different route. The early warnings. About an hour into the game, Leppings Lane was jam-packed with Liverpool fans trying to make their way into the tunnel that led to the pens before kick-off. As this happened, more fans arrived to join the crowd outside the stadium. Most fans preferred to sit directly behind the post at pens 3 and 4, but the crowd in the area was already building up beyond reasonable numbers. Public announcements went live on TV and radio, warning fans without tickets to stay away from the game. Inside the stadium, John Motson, the BBC commentator on Match Duty, cited the growing crowd and called the attention of the cameraman to get a picture of the scene. The stadium announcer also beckoned on the terrace to ease the tension by moving forward and sideways. But by then, the pens were already crowded, and the barriers and gates made it difficult for fans to switch. The match commander, Chief Superintendent David Duckenfield, and a junior officer discussed the possibility of postponing kickoff to give them a better chance of controlling the crowd. Eventually, they decided to proceed with the 3 p.m. kickoff. Meanwhile, the crowd of Liverpool supporters around the turnstiles had grown even larger. Seeing this bottleneck situation, Superintendent Roger Marshall called for the exit gate to be opened to reduce the concentration of fans outside. Eventually, Chief Superintendent Duckenfield gave his consent and Gate C was thrown open. Over 2,000 fans scuffled their way in and headed straight for the already jam-packed pens 3 and 4. The crush. Whilst the rush was ongoing in the stands, the players emerged from the dressing room and the game kicked off. The pressure in pens 3 and 4 was growing and the barrier in pens 3 broke. The situation escalated quickly. Some fans had to jump over the metal fence onto the pitch. Police initially thought it was a pitch invasion, but it dawned on them that a full-blown crowd disaster was underway. Efforts to rescue fans through the gates failed. 6 minutes into the game, the police realized their mistake, but it was too late to rectify it. Fans struggled to breathe, but it wasn't until 12 minutes past 3 that a St. John's ambulance volunteer crossed the fence into pen 3. 2 minutes later, the first ambulance arrived, but they could barely salvage the situation. 96 people had already given up the ghost, and 766 others suffered different degrees of injuries. The inquest. When Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher arrived at the scene 24 hours later, she was left dumbfounded. Consequently, an inquiry was opened into the incident, and the blame game began. A long-running court battle between the families of the victims and the police ensued. The match commander Duckenfield accused the Liverpool fans of forcing their way through the exit gate. The media milked it as much as they could, claiming that drunk and ticketless supporters triggered the disaster. One notorious headline by The Sun peddled the same narrative, suggesting that the fans urinated on police officers and picked the pockets of the dead. The year later, in January 1990, Lord Justice Taylor described the David Duckenfield failure to close off the tunnel as a blunder of the first magnitude. He also accused the match commander of failing to take effective control of the situation. Based on the match report, a decision was reached to ban standing in all games across the top two divisions of English football. By August, the Director of Public Prosecutions, DPP, declared that Sheffield Wednesday FC, Sheffield City Council, and Stadium Safety Engineers Eastwards would not face criminal prosecution. The families of the dead and injured victims were left angered by this announcement. It was not the ruling they had hoped for. Things became more controversial when coroner Dr. Stephen Popper ruled that any evidence pertaining to fan deaths after 3:15 p.m. was not valid because, in his words, the damage was done by then. The families again expressed dissatisfaction at the outcome, and the back and forth seemed to have just started. In March 1993, the last 96th victim of the Hillsborough disaster, Tony Bland, passed away at the age of 22 after his life support was taken out following a legal battle. He was one of the survivors of the disaster, but he had suffered fatal injuries that would leave him in a vegetative state until he died. New evidence emerged in a drama documentary writer, Jimmy McGovern, showing that some of the 96 fans were alive as of 3:15 p.m. on the day of the incident. In this documentary, investigators drilled Roger Holdsworth, the stadium's video technician at the time, who believed that the police failed to realise the central pens were very, very full. Still keen to find justice, Hillsborough Families Support Group launched a private prosecution against David Duckenfield and Bernard Murray. Both men were charged with manslaughter and misconduct in public office. The jury ruled for Duckenfield to be retried, while Murray was acquitted. Fast forward to April 2009. It was the 20th Hillsborough Memorial event at Anfield. The legal proceedings were still ongoing as the bereaved families continued to demand justice. After widespread outrage, a 140,000 signature petition forced members of the lower house of Parliament of the United Kingdom to discuss. Following the debate, a full disclosure of 300,000 documents was approved. However, in September 2012, the Hillsborough Independent Panel, HIP, released an evidence-based report indicting the emergency response services and match officers who ordered the gates open. The Sun editor Kelvin Mackenzie apologised for publishing the controversial headline that accused Liverpool fans of misconduct during the disaster. "I published in good faith and I am sorry that it was so wrong," Kelvin said. Trevor Hicks, a representative of the Hillsborough Family Support Group, was stern in his response, saying it was too little, too late. By December 2012, the High Court ruled against the findings of the initial inquest, which had stood for over 2 decades. It was also revealed that 41 of the 96 fans who lost their lives could have been saved, and a new police inquiry was opened into the disaster. Eventually, the new Hillsborough inquest began in Warrington in March 2014, and 1 year later, Chief Superintendent David Duckenfield admitted that his decision to close a tunnel before ordering Gate C open led to the death of the 96 fans. Furthermore, he admitted before the court that he froze under pressure. It was a huge achievement for families who had vowed to keep fighting until the truth was revealed. But they will certainly be disappointed with the events that have followed next. Several people, including David Duckenfield, have been charged for their role in the Hillsborough disaster, but so far, nobody has been convicted yet. A 97th casualty has since been recorded after Andrew Devine, who survived the disaster but suffered severe brain injuries, died in July 2021 at the age of 55. Nonetheless, prosecutors insist that they'll continue their quest for justice to the end. Remembering the victims. Perhaps more important than the court cases that followed, remembering the victims of the Hillsborough disaster is given high priority within the Liverpool and Merseyside community. Liverpool's manager at the time, Kenny Dalglish, personally reached out to all the families of the dead victims and attended all the funerals. He was mostly in company of his wife, Marina Dalglish, but sometimes he went to the funerals with players like Alan Hansen, John Barnes, and Bruce Grobbelaar. On one occasion, Kenny Dalglish and his wife attended 4 funerals in 24 hours. Some say the strain of the stress he went through back then took its toll on him, but the Liverpool legend is happy to have been able to help. For Kenny Dalglish, it was a personal obligation to offer as much support to the families of the dead, especially because his son Paul, who was one of the Liverpool fans in Leppings Lane, could have been a victim too. Luckily, he escaped unscathed. The most important thing for me was to deal with what the families were going through, Kenny Dalglish said. He added, "As far as we were concerned, we were fortunate our damage was not as permanent as it was for the families. If we were damaged for a little bit, then fine. For the help that we gave to the people who most needed it at that time, it's a small price to pay." Another Liverpool legend, Steven Gerrard, wasn't as lucky though. His 10-year-old cousin, John Paul Gilhooly, was the youngest casualty of the Hillsborough disaster. Gerrard was only 9 at the time, but he knew the implication of what happened on the day. "Unfortunately for myself and my family, we got the dreaded knock the next morning to say that a member of our family was at the game and had been killed," Gerrard recalls 20 years after the event. "Obviously, it was difficult to know that one of your cousins has been tragically crushed, but seeing the reactions of his mum, dad and family helped me drive on to become the player I have developed into today." Nowadays, a page on Liverpool's official website is specially dedicated to the 97 Hillsborough disaster victims. Also, Anfield is home to the Hillsborough Memorial Wall, where the names of the 97 victims are engraved. All Hillsborough victims have been posthumously awarded the Freedom of Liverpool. But possibly the most iconic memorial for the victims happened only a few months after the disaster at the final of the FA Cup. After the horror of the semi-final, Liverpool faced their bitter rivals Everton, but for the first time ever, the result of the match wasn't a priority for both teams. Fans held hands and intertwined as a show of unity, as Jerry Marsden gave an emotional rendition of Liverpool's anthem, "You'll Never Walk Alone." The role of Everton Football Club should never be forgotten, with footballing allegiances discarded as the Merseyside people nursed each other back to health. ESPN writer Ben Blackmore wrote about the incident. More recently, Liverpool fans were given a brutal reminder of the Hillsborough disaster during their trip to France for the UEFA Champions League final against Real Madrid, but thankfully, no lives were lost. The Hillsborough disaster is one scar that will never go away from the hearts of the Liverpool faithful. However, the support from the entire footballing community has certainly made the burden easier to bear. Thanks a lot for watching the video till the end. Be sure to check out our next highlighted video here for you, and we will see you there.